All right, good afternoon. Hi there, my name is Joanna Nelson, and I work for the New Mexico Economic Development Department. And also I have a small business here in Santa Fe in my spare time. So thanks for being here. Thanks to this excellent group of panelists that we have. Also thanks to SCORE and the City of Santa Fe's Economic Development Department for putting this presentation on. This presentation will be recorded, and you will be able to access this online as well as any presentation documents afterward. If you do have questions, we want to encourage you to ask those questions, and as the presenters are talking, feel free to put those questions in the question and answer box, and we will do our best to get to those at the end of the presentation. Before we begin, I just wanted to share that since the pandemic has started, I know in our office at the state level have been talking to business owners all across the state and have been listening to their concerns, their fears, their worries. And one thing that has become really evident right now is that it's so important to know about the opportunities that are out there and the help and the assistance that's out there, knowing the right people to talk to. So you are in a good place. It's a good opportunity to learn about this fantastic program today. So before we get started, I'll give an overview of what will be covered. We will hear about the legislation that created the Small Business Recovery Loan Fund as well from Speaker Egoff, and then we will hear from the New Mexico Finance Authority. And to kick things off, I'd like to introduce the Mayor of Santa Fe, Mr. Alan Weber.
Thank you. Well, hey, everybody, it's great to see you and see your participation in the attendee part of a Zoom call. This is a tremendous opportunity, and I have to pay my respects and give my thanks to all of the panelists, all the people who are making this happen from the state, from the Speaker's office, from our friends at SCORE. It's great to see our SCORE buddies back working together again. The city wants to be your partner as well. This is obviously a response, a creative response and a nimble response on the part of the state with partners to deal with this unprecedented COVID-19 economic crisis. And here in Santa Fe, we're aware of the fact that small business, family-owned business, entrepreneurs, mom and pop shops, you guys are the heart and soul of our economy. We want you not only to make it through this time, but to come out stronger, smarter, better equipped, more partners, more opportunities, to use this situation to your advantage. And everybody on this call who is here stands ready to help you, to support you. You may know, some of you may know that once upon a time I was an entrepreneur, and it is the most exciting, fun thing to do, to start your own business, run your own business, be your own boss. And it's the thing that keeps you up at night. And I'm imagining that in COVID-19 days, we're not only up all night, we're up all day. This is the time to ask for help. Everything starts when you ask for help, particularly with a team like this to offer help. So thanks to everybody who's tuning in. If you know people who should be tuning in and they're not, let them know it's all being recorded. They can catch it later. This is an ongoing effort to build back better, to borrow a phrase, after the COVID-19 passes, to be strong and to be together and to keep Santa Fe and northern New Mexico with our economy thriving, with jobs and everybody bouncing back from this downturn. So you got a great team ready to help you, and thanks for everybody for being a partner and taking part in this. It's a tremendous offer. Back to you.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for those words, and thanks for your leadership during this time. Next up, we have the Speaker of the House of Representatives for New Mexico, Mr. Brian Egoff.
Hi, everybody. I am going to share my screen, and that's all right. All right, can everyone see it? Okay. Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the city's economic development staff. Thank you, Joanna, from the Economic Development Department, Eileen, and all the folks at SCORE. Thank you all for bringing this together. Marquita and your team over at the Finance Authority, thank you for being here. And we'll just jump right in. As many folks know, we had a special legislative session in the last 10 days or so of June. It was meant to be the state's response, the legislature's response to the COVID-19 situation. We dealt with changes that were made necessary to the budget due to changing revenues received by the state. And we worked on election legislation, some public health legislation, and then we knew that an economic response was very important, on par with the health response. And so we spent several months leading up to the session looking at a way for the state to use some of our very large cash reserves and very large permanent funds and semi-permanent funds to offer economic assistance to small businesses and small business owners and self-employed individuals who are having a hard time, who maybe got a PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program loan from the federal government, and those funds have run out, or having a hard time making payroll, having access to working capital at this time. We wanted to provide an opportunity for these businesses to continue to exist during the pandemic, for as many of their employees to continue to get paid during the pandemic, and then help them with assistance from our small business development centers, organizations like SCORE, and also the expertise at the New Mexico Finance Authority to help these businesses, as the mayor said a minute ago, come back better after the pandemic than maybe they were before. So we created the Small Business Recovery Act. That was Senate Bill 3 in this session. And what it does is, first of all, it recognizes the important role that small businesses play in New Mexico's economy. They are the largest, small businesses are, of course, the biggest employer in the state. 80,000 New Mexicans at the beginning of the session were out of work. Many of those jobs were for small businesses that had laid off or reduced their staff. And we saw predictions that as many as 40% of small businesses would be closing their doors with uncertain futures about reopening. We looked at our Severance Tax Permanent Fund, which is a $5.5 billion fund. It is severance taxes that are paid by oil and gas companies. The funds go into the Severance Tax Permanent Fund, and usually we use the income off of this to pay bonds for capital improvements. But the Constitution allows us to appropriate money out of that fund if the money is being invested in New Mexico. So we decided to, in this law, define an investment in New Mexico as something that would be a small business loan to small businesses throughout the state. That we're investing in our small businesses with the idea that they will provide economic recovery and support at the other end of the pandemic. So if we, this is the snapshot of what things looked like at the beginning of the session. We had an unemployment rate of 8.3%. That has since ticked up over 12%, unfortunately. Santa Fe's unemployment at the beginning of the session was 9.5%. It's a little over 13% now, and there were 80,000 unemployed individuals. And unfortunately, those figures have all increased. And that's due because of the necessity of business limitations designed to help people maintain physical distance, The end of in-restaurant dining has occurred since the special session, although it is coming back on Saturday. So these employment numbers have not been looking great, and we wanted to have a robust state response to help serve as an economic stimulus for these small businesses. This is some information about Santa Fe County's impact directly. And I will skip through this one. This is looking at Santa Fe's employment, but just look at the leisure and hospitality. Again, these numbers were from the beginning of the session, but a 41% drop in employment in leisure and hospitality. That's restaurants and hotels, which are such a big part of the economy here in Santa Fe. So, as I said, the Severance Tax Permanent Fund is a fund made up of severance taxes paid on oil and gas operations, some coal, any minerals or anything that are extracted from the earth. The severance tax is paid, and that money goes into the Severance Tax Permanent Fund. As I said, the balance going in was $5.5 billion. And what this Small Business Recovery Act does is take $500 million from the Severance Tax Permanent Fund to create a loan program of $400 million for small businesses and $100 million for counties and municipalities throughout the state. And the plan is for businesses with revenue of $5 million a year or less who can show that there's been a reduction in their revenue year over year as compared to 2019. They'll be eligible to apply for and receive loans up to $75,000 per loan. The interest rate is extremely low. It's 1/2 of the prime interest rate, which at this point is, Marquita will have the numbers exactly, but it's about 1.25%, 1.5% on these loans. And these are for any New Mexico business or nonprofit that meets the criteria that are set forth about revenue and lost income. The program is administered by the New Mexico Finance Authority. And for those who aren't familiar with that, the New Mexico Finance Authority was created back in the 1990s, I believe, and it's a way for municipal and county governments and tribal governments to come together and put all of their smaller projects together into one bond offering that's backed by the credit of the state of New Mexico, which allows these small governments to get lower interest rates on their local projects. But there's a great wealth of experience and knowledge of financing and working with small businesses at the Finance Authority. And so they are the state administrator of this program. I believe it's newmexicofinance.org. Is that the right address, Marquita?
It is now nmfinance.com. We just changed our website. So.
Okay, nmfinance.com. And so you can go there and see all of the criteria. So here we have who is eligible. This is for businesses and nonprofits who have either closed or limited operations as a result of a public health order, fewer than 100 employees, and an annual revenue in 2019 of $5 million or less, and a 30% drop in, or 30% or greater drop in the gross receipts of the business. You can have up to 200% or $75,000 of your average monthly expenditures from 2019, whichever is greater. And I'm sorry, up to $75,000. Interest rate is half of prime. The loans, in order to be permissible under our state constitution's anti-donation clause, do have this very small interest rate charge. But it's important for business owners to know that no collateral is required and no personal guarantees are required. So we're not going to be asking the owner of a business to put her or his credit on the line in order to secure these loans. So the loans are personal to the business, and the owners of the business are not required to offer personal guarantees, which is a very big difference when a small business goes in and obtains a line of credit or a loan from a traditional bank. You always will have owners of 20% or more of those businesses offering personal guarantees. Those are not required under the Small Business Recovery Act loans. The term of the loan is 3 years, interest-only payments, and it's the loan is due at the end of 3 years with refinancing options, I believe, that Marquita can discuss. And so here we have, an immediate access for businesses, and the bill includes provisions so that small businesses, the barbershop down the street with an owner and maybe one part-time employee, businesses that don't typically work with banks or credit unions to establish lines of credit or take out business loans. There is quite a bit in this bill to make it easier for smaller businesses that don't traditionally engage in borrowing to have access to this program. And there's a large financial literacy component that goes along with that. Also, this doesn't add a single penny of expense to the state's general fund, because we're using the severance tax permanent fund. This doesn't have an impact on the state spending in other areas like education or healthcare. This is not an either or choice between spending money on this program versus spending money on something else that the government does. This is a $0 impact on the general fund. And then for the municipalities and the counties, those applications are in. There is applications are in for twice as much money as is available. So the state is going to have to do some work to figure out how that money is going to be allocated. So I think we're going to maybe, Marquita, make sure that Santa Fe gets 100% of its requests, and then see what's left over for everybody else. That's a joke. For those who don't know, I am the Speaker of the House, but I also my district is in Santa Fe, so I sometimes want to give a little shout out to the home team. So that's a quick view of the Small Business Recovery Act. I believe we are the only state in the country to have done a program like this. No other state has created, certainly has not created from scratch, anything like what we've done here. And I'm really proud that New Mexico is able to look at an innovative idea like the Small Business Recovery Act, get it up and running. And the applications have been live and active for nearly a month, I believe, Marquita, at least 3 weeks. And so we created a program, stood it up, adopted all the rules, and put in place the application process in a period of about 5 weeks, which is pretty rapid for a totally new program, spending $500 million. And so it's there. Applications are open until the end of the year. And I'm very hopeful that small businesses throughout the state will take advantage of this. The terms on these loans, you will not see anything close to this at any bank or any credit union. And the lack of the need to provide collateral or a personal guarantee also, I hope, will make this an attractive option for small business owners. So thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to you. And I'm going to have to jump off in a minute or two. So thank you again for the invitation. And I look forward to the rest of the webinar.
Great. Thank you, Speaker Egoff, and thanks so much for your leadership and service during this time. Next up, we have the New Mexico Finance Authority. So joining us, we have CEO Marquita Russell, who's also joined by Maria Gallardo with her staff. Marquita?
Great. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Mayor Weber, for including me and the Finance Authority today. I am joined by Maria Gallardo, who's going to go through a little bit of the application itself at the end so that you can see how simple it is. In the meantime, I'm going to run through a few slides, some of which duplicates the information provided by the speaker, but I think it's important for us, we can't say it enough, how beneficial the program is and how easy it is to access. So with that, I will take you to the fund itself. Again, it was signed into law on July 7th. The Small Business Recovery Act of 2020 does put into the Finance Authority 2 separate loan programs, one of which helps local governments. We're not going to be talking about that today. but we do have another program that's in the offing on that. The program we're going to focus on today is the Small Business Recovery Loan Fund, which provides the loans of up to $75,000 to those businesses that have been hard hit by the public health order. They can be used for a wide variety of projects. They do not require personal guarantees or collateral and have no payments for the first year. And I think that's a particularly important point. If you have to start making loan payments right away, it doesn't matter how beneficial the terms are, that may be a problem in these uncertain times. The amount of the loan is actually very specific calculation that's set in statute that takes into consideration your average monthly expenses. And the amount of the application is twice what your monthly average expenses are. So you don't apply for a certain amount, you put in your information, and then the application will tell you how much you're eligible to receive. And it takes into consideration last year's expenses, whether or not you've received a CARES Act loan, and some of the other things that you might have booked as depreciation on your tax, your 2019 taxes. The interest rate right now is 1.625, which is half of Wall Street Journal Prime, 3.25. And that's set for the life of the loan. So we're going to fix that loan. Doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon, but we're going to fix it on the day that it closes. And you're going to have that interest rate, 1.625, for the term of the loan. The loan itself has an initial term of 3 years. And again, that's interest only, paid annually until the end of the 3-year period, at which point principal is due. And if at that point you don't have the ability to make that whole payment, you can either prepay a portion of it, or you can convert the entire outstanding amount to a monthly principal and interest loan for 3 additional years. And again, that would still be at that 1.625. So interest only for 3 years for sure should give you some time to really stabilize again after these last several months. And again, this is a loan program. There is an expectation that the money will be repaid, but as the speaker went through in great detail, the legislature and the governor have done everything they can to eliminate as many barriers to access as possible. The 3 requirements, which again are set in statute, is that you've closed or reduced operations, that you've had annual gross revenues of less than $5 million, and that's going to be determined on your 2019 tax return. So if you have not filed those, you should get those filed relatively soon. And that you've experienced a 30% decline in each of April and May of 2020 as compared to those same months in 2019. The business can be for-profit, any for-profit organization, or a not-for-profit that's either organized as a 501c3, one of those charitable organizations, or a 501c6, which is an association like a chamber of commerce, for instance. If you are a sole proprietor, the statute requires that 100% of the assets be owned or leased by a New Mexico resident. If you're one of the other forms of a for-profit entity, like a corporation or LLC, something like that, then you'll have to be able to demonstrate that 80% of the ownership and control is with a New Mexico resident or with several New Mexico residents. And we'll look at your personal income tax return to determine residency. And that ultimately is whether or not you've been in the state for 185 days or whether you are domiciled here. So again, your personal tax return would show us that. The one thing that the Small Business Recovery Act does is it blends the Finance Authority and its resources very nicely with other resources that are throughout the state. So for instance, the banks, credit unions, and community development financial institutions are put into statute as loan servicers. And so while the application is completed by you, the applicant, the information comes to us and then is reviewed by these loan servicers. So there are banks, credit unions, and community development financial institutions that would review your information to determine it's correct and is evidenced by documentation. And then it's submitted to us for the Finance Authority to ultimately make the lending decision and to document the loan and to disperse the funds. And your relationship is with the Finance Authority, but it goes through this first intermediary of what they're calling a loan servicer. The other partner that is put with us is our technical assistance providers, either governmental or nonprofit technical assistance providers such as SCORE or the Small Business Development Centers, anyone that provides interactive assistance with a small business, and that's a small business that has revenues of less than $500,000. So those small businesses that are getting assistance in marketing or budgeting or any kind of tax information, those service providers can earn a fee paid directly from the fund. So the borrower can benefit from the ongoing technical assistance, but the fund is the one that's making that payment, and that payment is equal to a percentage of the actual loan amount. Applications opened about 3 weeks ago at nmfinance.com. And again, I'm going to have Maria go through that in a little bit. The application period pursuant to statute is till the end of the year, December 31st, or until the funds are gone, whichever comes first. And the applications are processed on a first come, first served basis. We are trying to, we set up a program that front ends all the information so that once you've submitted your application, unless there's some minor inconsistency or additional documentation that we need, you've submitted everything you need in order to close the loan. So we're not going to ask you to fill out an application and then keep coming back to you. You, at the time of application, submit everything you're going to need in order to get a loan document generated. And those documents need to be available in electronic format at the time you get ready, because the system's very simple and it's very straightforward, but it doesn't save your application. So as Marie's going to go through, make sure you have the time set aside and the documents you're going to need in order to complete the application available at the time you sit down. The information you're going to need is an electronic version of your 2019 business tax return, copies of the CRS reports that you submit to Taxation and Revenue, and those are the ones that include the months of April and May of 2019 and April and May of 2020, because again, we have to compare the revenues for those months. If you're a nonprofit, a 501c3 or a 501c6, you won't be reporting your gross receipts to Taxation and Revenue. So in those instances, we'll be looking for certified financial statements produced by the nonprofit, but certified either by one of its board members or an executive director that says these are true and correct. And we'll need to have them monthly. Again, what we need to do is pull out the information and make sure that the April and May of 2019 and April and May of 2020 have a comparison basis. We'll need to see any CARES Act loan documentation. If you've applied for a loan but haven't heard back, you don't need to provide any information to us. And if you've gotten a grant, you also don't need to provide information to us. So it's only a CARES Act loan documentation we're going to need. The personal income tax return, again, to go through the equity ownership and to demonstrate residency. And then an authorization form that's available on the system that allows us to pull the business credit of your applicant. And again, it's not going to be personal credit. We are looking solely at business credit. And we're going to be looking to make sure that you have paid in 2019, because we understand things have been going on in 2020, but we'll look in 2019 to see that you were responsibly handling your accounts as they relate to your telecommunications, rent, and utilities. So those three creditors are the ones that we're looking out for when we look at that credit report. You'll also need to be able to provide us at the time that you submit your checking account information. There's actually an electronic portal that you'll be asked to go into and connect your account to this system called Plaid, and it allows us to go in and make sure that the name on the checking account matches the name of the applicant, and to ensure that it's an actual account so that there's not a mistake in the filling out of the application, because that's exactly where the dollars are going to be deposited after the loan is closed. So we really want to make sure we have it right, that it's the right account, that it's not somebody else's account that you actually typed in. So we need to make sure that it's the right place so that the money goes where it needs to be. It is a very secure site, the application portal itself, as well as what's called Plaid technology, which allows us to peek into your bank account, we don't get to see balances or anything like that. We just get to see the name of the account and to see that it's valid. But it's all very secured and goes through encrypted sites. The other thing that you'll note about the application that Maria is going to walk you through is that it's got some built-in logic and will tell you if you've entered in something that makes you ineligible, so that you're not surprised later on to find out that you did not qualify. And then at the end of the day, all the information that you've submitted is going to be on a very secure site. The application and the application system will generate the loan document, so everything will keep coming back and forth through this same site. The only thing that's subject to public disclosure is the name of the borrower. So we won't be telling people how much you borrowed or anything like that, just the amount, just the name of the borrower. So no one else will know anything about your business information. The loan amount I mentioned earlier is 2 times your average adjusted monthly business expense. Again, this is the very technical definition, which is that it is your 2019 expenses, less any deductions you took for depreciation, less any CARES Act funding. You take that dollar figure, divide it by 12, that's your monthly adjusted monthly business expense, and then 2 times that is the amount of the loan, up to $75,000. So if you exceed that amount of money, then you'll just be at the $75,000 range. And then ultimately, the statute requires that you use the funds for ordinary business expenses, which includes anything related to COVID, retrofits, or any PPE that you may need. And you can use it for basically anything other than to pay employees who have equity ownership in the business. In that instance, you're limited to 20% of the loan proceeds being used for that specific purpose. The application itself is, we were running it sort of in a soft opening mode. We have applicants in the system, about 800 have applied. Approximately 20% of those ended up not having the requisite 30% decline, and the rest of the folks are running through the system now. And so the application itself should take about 10 business days from the point your application is submitted. And with that, I think I would love to turn it over to Maria to go through nmfinance.com and just give you a peek at the application so you can get a sense of what the experience will look like when you have your information together. Maria, I will stop sharing.
Sounds good. Thank you, Marquita, and thank you to everybody for having us here. We're more than happy to come explain this new program and walk you through the process and show how much we can actually hopefully help all the businesses in the state that are struggling through this crazy times that we're living right now. So I wanted to show you first the website. The website again is nmfinance.com. When you first log into the website, it's going to have this this banner which talks about the Small Business Recovery Fund, because that's kind of our focus right now. We want to help as many businesses as possible. By clicking on here, you have a lot of resources that become available to you. Not only do you have the application in both English and Spanish, but you have a how to apply video in case you get stuck or have any other questions. And then there's eligibility, pretty much everything that Marquita went through. It's all listed right here as far as terms, as far as the information, as far as what's needed, it's all listed on here. Once the applicant is ready to start the application, you will simply click on this link and it will take you to the application, which looks like this. The documents required for the business are stated right here, and the documents needed for a nonprofit are also listed right here. Now, the application asks you if you have all these documents in electronic format before you can proceed. Like Marquita mentioned, it has a built-in logic. So if you say, no, I don't have those documents ready right now, it's going to tell you that you should come back at a later time when you do have those documents available. So in this case, I made a mock application for a not-for-profit business, a sole proprietorship. And then the main question is going to be, are 100% of the assets owned by a New Mexico resident? Like Marquita mentioned, if this was any other type of business, it would say 80%. But we just want to make sure that it's at least 100% for sole proprietorships and 80% owned by New Mexico residents. You would put in the name of the company and the geographic information, address, phone number at the bottom. If the mailing address is different, it will go right here. And then it scrolls down to the actual authorized officer and the title of their authorized officer, as well as their email address. This is just basic information for the person who's filling out the application. Then it goes on to talk about revenue and revenue in decline. The revenue is listed specifically because I chose sole proprietorship. It's going to tell me to look at Schedule C. If I would have chosen a corporation, it would have told me to look at the 1120 or whatever tax document is relevant for the business 2019 tax return. So it tells you exactly what line to look at, and that's the revenue that you would put in. If I, for example, type in an extra zero and my revenue is over $5 million, it's going to tell me that I cannot proceed because it's over 5 million. Now, if it's not over 5 million, you can go ahead and proceed. This is the revenue and decline part of the application, in which you would provide the CRS numbers as provided to Tax and Rev. So this is how much the business generated in April and May of 2019 and April and May of 2020. And you will see that the application automatically does the calculation of decline, meaning from 2019 to 2020, this business had a 67% decline. We require that that number be at least 30%. So in this case, we're okay to proceed. In the case that it wasn't over 30%, you will again see that language. So like Marquita mentioned, you'll never be surprised if there's a decline, because the application will stop you in the case that there's something that doesn't conform with the statute or with the rules of the program. Then it asks for the EIN or social security number of the business. And then it goes forward to the business expenses. So again, it tells you exactly what line items to look at on the IRS forms. You would type in the expenses. We do the total expenses and the cost of goods. In this case, because it's a sole proprietorship, is expense for business as well, but it would tell you exactly what line items to look at. We will put that in. We would put in the depreciation, again, as stated on what line item from the IRS forms. And then if any CARES loan amount would go right here. In this case, I put 0. So like Marquita mentioned, everything is calculated in the actual system based on my expenses and the depreciation that I put in for this example. My loan amount is $24,167. So there's no, if you notice, I can't click on that. I can't change that. That's just a calculated amount, which turns out to be 2 times my monthly expenses from my tax returns. Following by that, I have, if you bank with any of these financial institutions, you would want to select them. In my case, I decided that they're not listed. And then right here, this is for reporting purposes. We ask where the money plans to be used. In this case, I put that 100% of the loan proceeds will be used for my employee wages. There is no restriction on any of these except for the owner salaries. As you can see, it says it may not be greater than 20%. So Marquita mentioned, not only is that an owner, but anybody that owns any kind of equity in the business itself. Then once we scroll down, it's going to ask you how many employees you have, again, for reporting purposes. It's going to ask you how many employees you had in March, how many you have right now, and how many you plan to have in March of next year. It will ask you what kind of business it is, and if any of these diverse business classifications apply. If not, I would put not applicable. And then it's going to ask you if you do any exporting of goods outside of New Mexico. In this case, I put no. And if there's any outstanding business loans, let's say another real estate loan or something, you would just put the value amount right here. And this is for reporting purposes only. It's not going to change the original loan amount that already calculated at the top. Now, this is where you would attach all the documents needed for this. So again, it tells you exactly what's needed. So the 2019 Schedule C, I would attach right here, followed by all these documents. This is the credit authorization form. You would click and virtually sign it, electronically sign it, and then attach it so that we can have it on file with the application as well. At the bottom, it asks for some certification statements, very basic, just making sure that everything you're allowed to do the application for the business, everything like that. And then this is the PLAD information that Marquita mentioned. This is where you would connect your bank account to the application so that we make sure we have a valid account number in place. Not only because we need to make sure that we have correct numbers, but because that's where the loan proceeds will be deposited. So you will connect right here to your bank account, and all this will be automatically filled in by the connection to your bank. And finally, there's a submit form. So once you submit, you will get a confirmation, and then that's it. Then it's about 10 business days. And we will, if there's anything missing, let's say that, for example, the Schedule C was incorrect or somebody missed CARES loan documentation, we will be sure to reach out to you via email, and you can send those to us in an encrypted, secure link. So that way we can reattach it to your application and we make sure we have everything. So with that, Marquita, Joanna, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. And I think the one thing that we didn't get through was if in fact you are ineligible because your decline is too little, or because your revenues are too high, you won't actually get the part of the application where you submit your bank information. So you won't be uploading documents because you won't be given the portal to upload documents, and you wouldn't be accidentally putting in bank information if the system is already telling you that you don't qualify. So if you're greater than 30%, not only can you not proceed, but the sections for providing really sensitive information disappear, and you won't be accidentally providing your tax forms or your bank information when you on the face of the application are not qualified. So that's the other thing about this system that's been very helpful, is that we still want you to hit submit because we really want to collect the data to be able to report back to the speaker and other policy makers about why folks weren't qualifying and what some of those reasons were. So as much information as you can give us, we will then turn around and give back to the policymakers. So if in fact your business doesn't qualify this time for some reason, we would at least be in a position to say, here's a need that we saw that we could not help as a result of the statute we were working with. So that's an important piece for us, not only providing you funding, but then providing information back to lawmakers so that they can say, now how can we help the other group? So with that, Joanna, we would be happy to answer any questions should there be some.
Great. Thank you so much, Marquita and Maria, for that great information. We know that you guys are really busy and working really hard to help small businesses out there. So thank you. And I think we're ready for questions. And Fabian, I do have to mention, I am not seeing a question screen. So maybe someone with the city is able to see the questions, or Eileen.
I don't see any questions just yet.
Okay. So where are they putting
Johanna?
the questions? If there is
Johanna
a
here,
question.
this is
Rich.
Hi, I do see questions in the Q&A. I'll read them out to you, and maybe we can field them with our subject matter expert. It's a question from Shannon Roberts. It says, did I hear correctly in that there are already more applicants by dollar volume than the state has funding available for?
So that's a great question. There are a couple of different programs at play here. For this particular program, we have plenty of funds right now where we have not really ramped up a lot of the education and outreach. So if you haven't applied, we believe you've got a safe window to get your information together and apply. So this is not a program that at this point has that we're in danger of running out of money on in the near future. The program that the speaker mentioned is one of the CARES Act communities were able to apply to the state in order to provide grant funds to businesses. And that one, as I understand it, has more demand than potential funding. So I think that was the program that the speaker was mentioning that is probably will be over requested.
Johanna, that's only the questions I see in the Q&A box. We're still open for questions. If you're on the Zoom call or YouTube, you can actually send your questions through. I think that the staff are looking at the YouTube page, and also I can see the Q&A page.
I do have a question just on my own. Have you all have seen quite a bit of applications come through. Is there anything that you're seeing frequently? Any errors that are coming from businesses that you might not have mentioned that you can bring up for folks, of things to keep in mind?
So I would say that the greatest reason for decline is because of not meeting the 30% requirement. The greatest issue with applications is when Maria, I'm not sure if I could summarize them all. There's where they have the incorrect documentation attached. That's what takes time, because then we have to go back, get the information, get it input, and then put it back in the system. So that's the most time consuming of the errors that I've seen. But I'm not sure if I'd characterize that as the most frequent error that we made.
I agree with you, Marquita. I think not attaching either the correct forms or not attaching all the forms is one of the errors that we see on the application, because then we have to reach out to the applicant again and kind of start the process from the beginning. So we have ways to validate the numbers and put into the application. Other than that, the application has the built-in logic, so there's not very much room for error. It's just if you don't qualify based on the requirements, then it would automatically decline you or tell you cannot.
The other thing that we're seeing, Joanna, is that folks submit the application, and then because the information's coming from our FormStack application site, which gets a lot of traffic, some of the email filters are picking it up as spam. And so that's unfortunate. So they'll have loan documents sitting for a couple of weeks in their spam folder. So we've had to regenerate a bunch of loan documents because they're not on the lookout for either our exchange or the FormStack exchange. So that's the other frequent thing that we're seeing.
Joanna, I see one more question in the Q&A room from Peter Doniger. It says, if the business fails in 3 years, what happens to the loan balance?
So that's an excellent question, and it's one that was highly debated. These loans are unsecured and they're business loans. So we're not looking for personal guarantees, and we're not, we don't have any of the assets of the business owner on the line. If the business fails, we don't really have any recourse as the finance authority. If the business is ongoing, but they simply don't pay, then we'll have a collections effort, and we have some remedies in law in order to collect on it. But if the loan fails because the business fails, I think that's the risk of the program. We can't go after business owners because their business failed. The obligation is of the business.
There's a question from YouTube. Do we know how many businesses have applied for the SBRA loans since the application opened earlier this month?
We've had about 800 applications. We get in about 40 a day, 40 to 50. Not all of them qualify, obviously, again, because we're recommending that people submit regardless. So we have about 250 in the pipeline for closings. That could be that their documents are sitting in somebody's spam folder, or they've already been funded. But there's about 250 what I call in the closing queue, which means that we've approved them for loans, and they are in the process either being funded or getting the loan document signed. And I would mention that it's all done via electronic signature. So you can sign this from your iPhone. These are loan documents that because you don't actually have to sign anything and scan and send it back, it can be done from your smart device while you're working. So it's very straightforward and easy once you've completed the application.
One more question from the Zoom Q&A from Bob Vidal. I have worked with a number of Spanish-speaking only business owners that don't have the technology to upload their documents. What is the alternative?
In those instances, I would recommend that they work with one of the technical assistance providers across the state, SCORE, SBDC. There's other resources available at community colleges. Those would be the places that I would start with if they don't have those resources. And again, if they have revenues of less than 500,000, then the technical assistance provider can get paid a fee for the work that they help them with.
I'd like to offer a comment that in reaching out on the marketing for your program, Marquita, talked to a number of people, and an individual from Northern New Mexico Winery, I think the name was, has been successful. He applied for funding, and he was very complimentary on the ease of the process. Everything that both you and Maria described came through perfectly. And he was simply very complimentary on how smooth the process was. And it was the best encounter he had with the government program, so to speak. So I thought I would share that with you.
Thank you. That's great. They probably were working with Maria directly, I'm sure.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Oops, I think we have another question. One more question from Pilar. What if a business started in March of 2020?
Unfortunately, that's one of the things that we're unable to help. If the business, they bought the business and it was existing a year ago, we would be okay. But if they started up, we don't have a base set of revenues to compare it to, and therefore the business is ineligible. We have encountered those instances in which they purchased the business from someone. So it was an existing business, you know, in all of 2019, but they didn't buy it until like January of 2020. So as long as they're able to get the CRS reports for those businesses for those months and the tax return for those from the prior owner, we can still process the application for the current owner.
Right. Okay, Eileen and Rich, any more questions?
I'm not seeing any more, Johanna. Oh, one more just popped up. Let's see.
Okay.
I have two more. One from Peter Doniger. It says, an Airbnb will file taxes on Schedule E rentals in some cases. They may not have Schedule C.
I think, Maria, I don't remember on that one. Do they pay gross receipts tax? Are they exempt from gross receipts tax?
So thank you for that question. That's actually a really good question because it doesn't fit the normal pattern of an LLC or a corporation. We have done a couple of property development companies in which they report under the 1085, I want to say, where all the rental income is listed on there as well as their expenses. And then their CRS, whether they're exempt or not, they will still file it, whether they actually pay any taxes or not. But all the information would be from their federal tax return. So if they, for example, let's say that they don't know if they have the correct forms or if they don't know if they need any additional forms, they can always reach out to us. We have an email address for questions and it's recovery@nmfa.net. And then it has our phone number as well on the website so that anybody can reach out with questions, especially for those unique businesses that may not fit the mold of a standard business structure.
And we're seeing, I think we're hearing from most of those directly. And we do have some people that got a lot more expertise than certainly I do on tax returns that are helping these clients with those kinds of questions.
Great, great. I have a few more questions, but I'll defer to Eileen real quick. If she has anything from YouTube.
I have not seen anything on the YouTube.
Okay. So another question from Bob Vidal. It says, what is the average loan?
So the average loan is right around $50,000 so far. We've fewer than half qualify for the maximum amount. And then the rest, the average is around 30,000. So it's like 45% qualify for that $75,000 match. And then the ones that aren't maxing out, their average is right around 30,000.
Great, great. One more question from Anonymous. If your business did not make a profit in 2019, does it still qualify?
It does. So we're not underwriting this the way banks would, looking for profits to as the source of repayment. We're looking for qualifications of the business. So as long as you report your CRS to taxation and revenue and did so in 2019 and 2020, and as long as you filed a 2019 business tax, then you should be eligible to apply. Again, you may not, depending on how much is another question, but you would at least be able to apply and receive some amount. We did ironically get, I think, 2 applications for people that by the time they put in all of their deductions and their CARES Act loans, they actually qualified for like a negative $35. So, you know, it may be that you don't get as high a loan as you need, but you would certainly get a loan, and it's based solely on the calculations that are in statute.
Great. Another question from Anonymous. It says, can you receive self-employment UI benefits and still get a loan?
Yes, they're unrelated.
Okay, great. I think that's all I have here.
Okay, any from you, Eileen?
No, not anymore.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you for those questions. So to wrap up, we were going to hear some words from Rich Brown, who is the director of the City of Santa Fe Economic Development Department. So Rich?
Yeah, thank you, Johanna. Thank you. I want to thank the mayor, Speaker Egoff, NMFA SCORE, and especially my economic development team for the great job. I think there's some good questions, and I thought that the presentations were very clear. I believe they provided a roadmap to help small businesses access this loan recovery program. And I implore everybody, especially here on YouTube and also on Zoom, to take the time today to go visit nmfinance.com to learn more and to sign up. You can sign up in English or Spanish. And our partners in SCORE and SBDC are available to assist too. And I know there's a lot of information to absorb, and trying to figure out what's best for you. These technical advisors from SCORE and SBDC could be very helpful in that standpoint. So also, I'd like to make a plug for SCORE to say go and to SCORE Santa Fe and register and sign up to receive a workbook. And they have a mailing list too, so it'd be great to get on that mailing list to understand what's coming up further. There is another CARES Act small business grant program coming down the pike. It has not been announced, but there will be more details, and a SCORE would be a place to go to get started if you are one of those businesses that qualify. In closing, I have confidence that our economy will bounce back if we make a concerted effort to stay safe and stop the spread of this virus. As we know, there's no vaccine to prevent infection, so as we tell everybody, mask up, wash your hands, avoid close contacts, stay home if you're sick, avoid touching your face, eyes, nose, and mouth. Be sure to cover your sneeze and cough, and clean and disinfect frequently. With that, I wish you well and hope that we have stressed that we're all together in this health and economic crisis, and that resources are available. They're available now to help you navigate and survive. I want to thank you, especially Johanna, our moderator for both of these seminars. So have a great day, and I wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank you.